Hello and welcome to the Stress Mastery Podcast. I am your host, Peggy Romero. Finally, it's Saturday, and I thank you so much for joining me today. So this week on the podcast, we've been talking about unity. So unity, the state of being united or joined as a whole. We'll just go with joined as a whole because my fifth grade teacher taught me you're never allowed to use the root word in the definition of the word. But I think joined as a whole pretty well sums it up, right? Sounds simple, doesn't it? But I think after thinking about it all week, unity can be rather complicated. There's so many groups, people, beliefs, values. It's kind of tough to be unified with everyone around me all the time, even though I'd like to be. And I've been thinking about this too. Unconsciously, it seems like we do have love, like a love like nature to mankind or to humanity as a whole. I'm not quite sure how to say it, but deep inside, we love everyone. We want the best for everyone. But consciously, it feels like, well, maybe we don't really. You know what I mean? It's like, what's in it for me? Or what have you done for me lately? Survival of the fittest. Now, I'm not including psychopaths or complete narcissists in this idea that I have, because I know some people really don't care about others, but I think they're very few. So I'm just going to say we're all sympathetic or empathetic on some level, right? We all feel united to one another by some varying degree, don't we? We're human beings. I can think about one person, any person, and honestly care, like I really do care. We all care about each other as individuals, individually, I think. Even though I know it's true, people kill each other every day for little or nothing. We'll rob, cheat, and steal with no regard for our brother. And yet, here in the U.S., I have seen it differently. I have actually seen unity, and you have too. Because remember, we were all united right after 9/11, if only for a minute. We were one. There were flags flying all over for just a week or two. United we stand. Boy, I wish we could have kept that attitude here, that feeling, that state. It was togetherness, and I wish it could have lasted. It was unity, but it didn't last. I do believe that life is easier if you have the right people that are with you, united with you. I love people. I cry over Hallmark commercials and movies and shows. I don't like to watch scary things. I don't like to see people get hurt. And I don't like for people to lose. Like even in a game, I don't beat people too bad. I mean, I don't want people to lose even if it's against me. I want everyone to win. But I also want to win too. So sometimes it's impossible. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I care about people. I would love to help you with whatever your problem is so that you can have your best life. Oh, what I wouldn't give to be able to feed every hungry child in the world and dry every tear. I know that I would like to be able to lift up people who are down. I love to do that. I love to give an embrace to anyone who needs a hug and to cheer up people who are depressed or grieving. One soul unified with another, if only for the moment. But we have to have unity with ourselves first, you guys. I mean, how can I love you or take care of your needs if I can't even love myself? If I can't keep my own ego in check, if I fail to keep my heart open and connected to my head, how on earth am I going to help you? Living connected, head, heart, and hand, is an essential component of wholeness, of unity, oneness. Not to each other, but to ourselves. We behave unsympathetically, unloving to the person in the mirror every day. We say awful things to ourselves. David just mentioned it on the podcast, I think today. It's Friday, I'm recording this. We say things to ourselves that nobody else could ever say to us in a million years. We wouldn't accept it. But we take it from ourselves. And then we live in these bodies that we don't take care of. I read that suicide is one of the leading causes of death in both teens and the elderly. And that's the official cause of death. That doesn't count for all the people who drink themselves to death or overdose on drugs, or those of us who eat a lousy diet day after day and don't exercise at all, sitting around watching TV every night or sitting at a desk all day and not ever moving. We know it's killing us. Is that suicide too? 3 million people die of illnesses related to obesity every year. What about when an alcoholic dies of liver disease? Long, slow death, right? Or a drug addict suddenly dies on an overdose. I mean, that's not taking care of ourselves. But is that really suicide? And then we look at ourselves in the mirror and belittle ourselves or say terrible things like, oh, you're disgusting and ugly, you're a fat pig. Or I've even heard of people looking at themselves and saying, I hate you, and meaning it. It breaks us down, you guys. It hurts. It tears us apart from our own self, from our very being. Our true self and ego are not usually united. And that's the ego talking. I think the most important kind of unity is being in union, oneness with yourself, your heart. To decide to stay connected to your purpose, to love yourself unconditionally, is up to us, up to each one of us. We have to decide to stay connected within. But how? You know, unworthiness is a really hard mountain to climb. It's steep, believe me. I've climbed it for many years. It was like a constant juggling act. Who am I? Why do I think I deserve more than what I have? Why can't I be content with what I have? Why? And then always understanding that, yeah, God loves me. I'm sure that there's a great life ahead of me. And trying to have faith that there really was a better plan for my life, while wondering, am I supposed to work for that? Push for it? Or is it just going to come to me if God decides I'm worthy of it? All the while trying to figure all this out on my own with my own strength. Let me tell you, it was exhausting. Not only emotionally and physically, but also spiritually. Trusting the process and doubting the process all at the same time. Like I said, juggling act. Trusting God and doubting God all at once, all in that very instant. I desperately needed something, and I just didn't know what it was. It was just like I spent my life. Why? Discontent, disappointed, divided within myself. There's no unity in that, and that's how I lived. You see, at the time, I didn't know about the importance of understanding the ego. I didn't know a thing about stress mastery. I didn't even know that there was an ego in the first place. And I often felt like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, flipping back and forth, back and forth. I didn't even know who I was. My head didn't match my heart. My actions sometimes showed that I trusted in life, trusted God, trusted my very being. And I knew that I could do all things, like seriously. Sometimes I knew I could do anything, but then the doubt would come in. So what does this mean? Do I have faith or not? I mean, when I was up, things could be going really, really well. And then the self-doubt would always come in. You know, I've told you guys this before in the podcast. I actually thought that I made up the law of mind. What you think you create, what you feel you attract, what you imagine you become. I knew it for a fact. I knew that it worked because I'd proved it to myself many times. And it started when I was a little kid. I've also told you guys this before. I was probably less than 10. And I told my siblings when we didn't have any heat, any oil in the winter, I remember being all huddled under a blanket and telling them, don't think you're cold and you won't be. That was the first thing I manifested. There was a time that I started manifesting, like believing for everything that you could imagine. Making more money, having a better house, going on vacations, traveling the world, looking better, feeling better, new cars, big bonuses. And I got them. I thought those things would make me feel better. I thought that's what I needed to be happy and fulfilled. To go from lack to having, I mean, what more could there be? But they didn't, because I was just surviving emotionally, spiritually. I had no purpose. I had no unity within myself. So I was never content. I mean, never. It didn't matter what I had. I would work to get the thing, whatever, it was. And, I did feel great for a minute, but it was very short-lived. Then it was like, okay, well, I'm not fulfilled still. So what's next? There was a big problem and I needed a resolution and I had no idea what it was. Thank heavens, Stress Mastery helped me figure it out. So there was no unity because I wasn't aligned to my purpose. Now I understand my purpose. It wasn't living head, heart, and hand. I'd never heard of such a thing. I didn't even know that there was a concept. It was head, my ego, telling me, Peggy, you need this, do this or that, and you'll feel better. It was head to hand, but it skipped my heart. From the idea to the doing without ever connecting to the why, without ever considering my purpose or the reason for doing it. So it doesn't always match. Well, to tell you the truth, I did ponder many, many times in my life, what am I doing here? God, what am I supposed to be doing? But I had no idea how to figure it out. It seemed too deep, way too deep of a question for me. I'm not a philosophical person. But back then, of course, I also thought personal development was for, just weirdos, and any kind of spiritual awakening or looking at myself would have been, woo. I thought it was sinful to dig into myself too much. Wrong to even want more out of life. You can't believe how many times I heard, just be content, Peggy. For once in your life, be happy with what you have. Well, what I really needed was to slow down and think more deeply about what makes me happy. Figuring out my purpose and understand what God actually had planned for my life. We're all here for a purpose. All of us. We're created for a purpose. And it turns out all that stuff that I'd been seeking, working for and wanting wasn't nearly as valuable as getting to know myself. And so what helped me most, and I think that it might help you too, was understanding that the ego is not me. Once I knew that I wasn't two-sided, like so conflicted, not united with myself. I actually am two-faced. And the realization that it isn't just me, to know that we're all the same, like I'm like that and so are you. Oh my gosh, that helped me so much. Clarity. Finally, I found some peace within myself. A little unity. Okay, so I'll ask you again, like I always do. Please name your ego, you guys. This will create awareness. You're not crazy. You're normal. We all have that inner turmoil, that inner voice that won't be quiet, that contradicts us constantly. So we all know about the dual identity or the two sides, if you listen to the podcast. We call it splitting the eyes, the eye of identity and the eye of presence. And they're not usually united, you guys. The ego is constantly, which is the eye of identity, constantly telling you who you are, trying to tell you that. The eye of presence is you connected to your heart, your true self. So once you can name the ego, now you can start noticing who has control of the thoughts in your head at any given time. Because if it's separating you from yourself, it's the ego constantly trying to separate yourself, separating you from your family and friends, separating from your heart. It's the ego that causes us to judge. The second that we see somebody, we've learned this before, we begin to judge them. I think it's like in 7 seconds, we've made 10 decisions about them. As if we have the right to. I mean, seriously, we don't even know anything about them. I'm going to tell you guys a really funny story about judgment and separation because I crack myself up sometimes. And so a couple of weeks ago, I just met this guy at a dinner party that a friend hosted. So he was alone. So I walk in, there was 2 couples, the people who live there and him. And I thought, oh, he must be single. He's by himself. He had salt and pepper hair, wavy, looked a little bit shabby. I was thinking he needed a trim. I used to be a hairdresser, so I wanted to trim his beard and give him a little haircut. His face was red, and he had a glass of wine sitting in front of him. He's a long-time drinker, Lucy assumed. He was dressed in casual, sporty clothes, but he looked a little bit tired, so I wondered if he really worked out or those just his, way he likes to dress. Well, then, after a minute or so, I realized his shoulders were red, too. And, he's red everywhere. He's got a sunburn. Oh, and yeah, that glass of wine in front of him, it wasn't his. It belonged to my friend Vicky, who was hosting the dinner party. It's so funny, all the things that my ego decided in an instant. As if I'm the judge and jury in the first place. I didn't even know a thing about him, and I decided all these things about him. So it turned out I didn't really ever get to know him very well that night because, it was a mixed group of people and there were, broad, like general conversations. But I did learn that his wife had gone back to Minnesota and she texted him while we were there, letting her know that her flight was canceled. And she decided to rebook it in a couple more days instead of taking the next flight. And he talked about being able to cook for himself, but he didn't really like it. So he was going to go up to Sam's Club and get some stuff that was easy for him to heat up. I figured out he loves his wife for sure. He misses her a lot, but he was really glad that he didn't go because he didn't want to be stuck in the cold in Minnesota because he hates the cold. So talking about his house and, it's 3 bedrooms and the kids moved out. So what I really learned after hearing him talk a lot about his 2 sons and his 3 grandsons, after a few hours, I realized, I think he's a really nice family man, not an alcoholic that needs a trim. But do you see how my ego had me separated from him? I had decided I have nothing in common with this guy. I judged him without him saying a single word. And this is what our ego does all the time. So here I am. I start out this podcast saying how I love people and I want to be there for people and I want to help people. And I'd love to be God's ambassador on all of the earth. And yet I judged him and dismissed him as somebody I'd want to be friends with in less than 7 seconds. That's not unity, guys. So I say that I was so happy to learn about the ego because this changed everything for me. To understand how it separates me from everybody intentionally is amazing. But you know what? It didn't change anything just to understand about it. Each one of us has to make our own decision. We all have a choice, right? It's up to us to decide if we're going to decide to change and start seeing things differently. We have to decide to catch the ego. And it's not easy because the programs that we carry were set as when we were little kids. And they're designed to never change. And most of us have been carrying our programs for many, many years. We've got stories of struggle, bad habits, and we're so judgmental. Oh my gosh, honestly, I can't help it. But I see it now. So that's the good news. At least I'm aware of it. As that gentleman talked that night and showed me who he really was, I was laughing internally at my ego. Like completely laughing at myself. I couldn't believe the story that I created in my mind. But it's not the only time I've done it. That's just my one example. But believe me, when I tell you how important awareness is, it's our superpower. If you can become aware, you can change, you can grow. So let me ask you a few questions. Do you know your purpose? Have you named your ego? Do you love yourself? I mean, really love yourself? Or do you hear yourself saying negative stuff? Do you beat yourself up? Can you decide to be in agreement with yourself? Decide this. I'm whole, perfect, powerful, strong, loving, harmonious, and happy. Enjoy the journey that you're on. Enjoy every step of the process, no matter where you're at. Green Focus Power Hour sets the day for success. But even if you aren't currently practicing that, do yourself a favor. Take one small step for unity for yourself. Visualization and affirmations. They're life-changing, you guys. Those are 2 of the steps in Green Focus Power Hour. This has helped me to escape from my unworthiness. You know, that mountain I've been climbing, trying to feel valuable and worthy in this world. I just don't believe that I'm the only one who struggles with this. So I'm just going to share this with you, how it works, how it worked for me. One thing you can do is agree with yourself each and every day and say it out loud. I'm whole, perfect, powerful, strong. I'm loving, harmonious, and happy. For me, I added, I am healthy and I live in peace. Add whatever you need to add. I know that it's uncomfortable saying it out loud over and over, but you're speaking it out over your life. It's like claiming victory for yourself and visualize it. See yourself the way that you want to be, the way you intend to be. Doing the things that you want to do. See it. Who do you want to be with? What are you wearing? It's you. Become it. And you do deserve it. And you will become it because you become what you think. You guys, seriously, I know it is really uncomfortable to do that. I remember when I first started and Bill just gave me those 2 sentences and I'm like, I'm supposed to say this for 10 minutes over and over. Oh my gosh, I cringed. I had to write a whole book full of stuff because I couldn't just claim it for myself. And then after a while, I challenged myself and I started looking in the mirror and saying it. And after a while, you get comfortable with it. And now it's true. I am whole, perfect, powerful, and strong. I am loving, harmonious, and happy. I am healthy, and my life is so peaceful now. Oh my, especially compared to how it was. I do live in peace. It's amazing. It's true. It works. So just try those couple little things for you. And remember, you do become what you think. And your subconscious doesn't know if what you're saying is real or imagined. And this is also why it's terrible for us to put ourselves down. Your soul is listening. Your subconscious hears you. So always speak what you want and not what you don't and not what you don't want. I used to have to remind myself constantly, Peggy, focus on what you want to happen. Don't think about what you're afraid will happen. Focus on the positive. Another way to keep yourself united with you is to keep a written record, a journal. Gratitude and any conflicts that need resolution. This is just another way of being true to yourself. Each time something good happens to you or goes right for you, big or small, write it down in the journal. Let go of all grievances and judgments. Decide to be a forgiving person. Make a decision to let things go and they will actually melt away. Just do the let go over and over every day. And someday, suddenly, that mountain of insecurity, that climb of unworthiness will melt away. And the love for yourself, the unity, will become a solid foundation for your life. I promise. You guys, I'm so grateful that you're here because the things we learn in Stress Mastery are amazing and they will help us with unity. First with ourselves, connecting head, heart, and hand, living with integrity, so then we can love others. We need to remember, don't listen to the ego. The ego's like the devil. He came to kill, steal, and destroy. Listen to your heart. Forgive yourself. Know that you're worthy. You are worth it. Keep your word to yourself. Win the day. Carpe diem, right? Create awareness. That's the superpower. And I think that's half the battle. Because once you know, you know. So we're here for you. And if you need any help with any of these techniques or the 7 steps of stress mastery, which are life-changing, hop into the community. It's free for 30 days. Get all the resources and join our conversations. We have fun in there and we would love to welcome you in. And I hope that my words help you guys. And I want to remind you, if you haven't bought my book, I wish you would. It's called Finally, Becoming the Person You Were Always Meant to Be. You can find it at book retailers or buy it from me directly at PeggyRomero.com. I thank you for supporting me. Please follow me at PeggyWithPurpose on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thanks again for listening today. And that is it for today's podcast. Remember, our mission here is to create a shift in the planet, and you can join us on the mission by simply like, share, and subscribe. The links are right below the show notes. As always, until next time, stay inspired.